What is up, XRP community? Welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining me. I have some great clips here. I want to walk you down a little history lesson on modern day banking and a lot of great XRP content. But first, they say Bitcoin is not a security because it's decentralized. We'll look at this right here. For the first time ever, two firms control over 51% of the Bitcoin network. They can easily join forces and change Bitcoin's code to anything they want. This is a huge risk and one of 1,000 reasons why I will never hold my funds in this centralized scam of an S-coin. A failure of its white paper, Bitcoin. And if you guys do use Twitter, give me a follow on Twitter. Links in the video description below. I love engaging with you guys on Twitter. And now for a clip from the FSB chair and president. My friends, I want to talk to the people of the United States about banking. When the U.S. closed banks for 3 days in March 12th of 1933. Very interesting.
Much at home here. But talking to a predominantly US audience, I thought it would be good to start with a quote that hopefully will resonate as much with you as it did originally with me. And the quote is as follows. My friends, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking. End of quote. So began on March the 12th, 1933, the first of about 30 fireside chats that President Roosevelt delivered over the radio. And it was 8 days after his inauguration. He had spent the first week coping with an epidemic of bank closures that affected households in every state. 3 days after closing down the entire American banking system, Congress passed the Emergency Banking Act, and Roosevelt used it to create the Federal Deposit Insurance when the banks reopened. That Sunday night, on the eve of the end of the bank holiday, Roosevelt spoke to a radio audience of more than 60 million people. And he told them in very clear language, quote, what has been done in the last few days, why it was done, and what the next steps are going to be, end of quote. And this result was a remarkable turnaround in the public's confidence. Well, since this almost iconic banking crisis of 1933, we've seen financial crises in various shapes and sizes throughout the world. And now the COVID crisis poses yet a new challenge to the financial system. So how has the financial system stood up against this latest test? And what can we learn from it for the future? These are the questions that I want to address with you today. First, what I will try to reintroduce is the concept of systemic risk, and I will argue that this has been the primary ingredient in financial crises throughout history.
So he goes on to say, during the COVID-19 dilemma, the financial system did not respond too well, and it could be some sort of proxy, some sort of reason, situation we've been put into where, oh, look, amazing, now we have to innovate the global financial framework in certain ways, i.e. CBDCs, global cross-border payments, and just a bigger push towards globalization. And now for a great clip, BlackRock's Larry Fink describing Flare networks. This token came out about 36 hours ago, and it brings communications across all blockchains to the XRP ledger.
It is my fear that we are not going to have the ability for any fiscal stimulus for any time soon. Deficits do matter. And at the same time, the central banks are going to take years in which they're going to have to unwind all their quantitative easing, all their bond purchases that they did over the last 10 years and aggressively in the last few years. They're not going to be as fully equipped to re-stimulate the economy. So we believe we're going to have rates fundamentally higher, maybe where they are today. They're not going to go down. At the same time, we're just not going to have an economy that is based on real growth that we are accustomed to. I actually believe most of the companies are not going to be around. Think about FTX. Its failure was it's creating its own token. It was not a DeFi ledger that was open to the world. It was a closed ledger. Right. It was not distributed. So
a DeFi ledger that is open to the world. And that's exactly what Flare is. It's a ledger that allows any other blockchain to come on
The whole
and then,
foundation of what crypto
pardon me, and then communicate with other blockchains that previously were not able to.
is, it's supposed to be a distributed ledger that is across the system. I actually believe this technology is going to be very important. We have been part of the huge revolution in investing through ETFs. We believe that ETFs will be changing the whole way we invest. Many people still use it as a means, well, people are investing it for indexing. No, the majority of people who are putting money in ETFs are active investors that are buying exposure. The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. And if we can have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem. You don't need trust banks.
But does that disrupt you eventually?
So he's not saying Flare verbatim, but he's describing exactly what XRP's distributed ledger technology does with something like Flare Networks. Now for a great clip from attorney John Deaton talking about the lack of integrity from Gary Gensler.
With Bankman-Fried to give FTX a regulatory-free pass while a massive fraud was going on right under the SEC's nose, close quote.
Let's just look at focus, right? So obviously the SEC has a significant budget. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know Gensler was asking for, 2-point-something billion for the fiscal year. He doubled basically the personnel assigned for crypto. He doubled it, right? That's a 100% increase. If they had 25 people, now they have 50. If they had 50, now they have 100. So he's dedicated an entire division, so to speak, or subsection of a division for crypto. But where has his focus been? His focus has been on BlockFi, no fraud. Ripple, no fraud. Library, no fraud. Dragon Chain, no fraud. And the list goes on and on and on. And so, Ray, you and I know that a company like Link2 wants regulations, right? They want smart, tailored regulations. I want smart, tailored regulations because that's what's holding this entire industry back. But we can all accept the fact that there are pump and dump schemes. There are fraudsters. So while Gensler and his team have been going after good actors, claiming that they just didn't register, they didn't make a certain disclosure. Celsius has happened. Sam Bankman fraud has happened. He's having multiple meetings, and Tom Emmer, a congressman, stated that it got so far that a short form disclosure may have been developed that Sam Bankman fraud was behind and that they were close to some kind of deal. Now, I don't know if that's happening. All I can tell you is that a U.S. sitting congressman said that. And so while he's meeting with the devil himself, right, and having multiple meetings, cutting some kind of deal, we all know that Sam Bankman fraud was against DeFi and going to agree to certain provisions that hurt other parts of crypto to gain a regulatory advantage. That's regulatory capture, where you have one particular person who happens to be the number 2 donor behind George Soros of the sitting administration cutting a deal while all this fraud's going on. And that's the problem. And it's a problem of focus. Why are you going after Kim Kardashian, dude? Why are you, at least in her tweet, I'm not defending Kim Kardashian. I'm just saying it was a tweet, right? Or an Instagram, and it had hashtag ad. Like it was letting it be known that it was ad. But he goes after Kim Kardashian. He does a video. He goes on CNBC and he's saying, look, this is what the SEC is doing to protect consumers. That's not protecting consumers. In the meantime, Celsius is happening, FTX is happening. And so that's either he is corrupt or incompetent or both. That's my personal opinion, right? And if you look at competency, he should be fired and he should resign just based on the fact of all this has happened under his watch.
And that's a great way to end it. He's either corrupt or he's incompetent or both. If you guys are still watching, make sure you smash that like button. It does a lot for the channel. And have a great evening.